go ahead and start since it's 1 o'clock, and those who want to join us a little bit late can go ahead and do that. So I will first introduce myself. My name is Amber Clark, and I am the director of the Columbus Airport here in Georgia, but I also serve as the secretary for the Georgia Airports Association. I'm also the chair of the education committee, and so we have designed our monthly webinars to help encourage our members to gain additional knowledge or education in areas that they may need refreshing on, maybe don't, have a lot of experience in, but this is supposed to be, very supportive of our airport managers in their roles. So we, as always, ask for feedback. If you have a particular topic that you're interested in, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email, or you can go on our website. There is a link where you can actually submit ideas. So we've got plenty more to come, but we'd love to hear from you. So welcome to our session today. This is our second webinar, and this is going over the 5010 form. So we'll talk about the importance of the 5010 form, kind of the process of filling it out, and then some lessons learned. We actually have two panelists today, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and introduce both of them now, and then I will let each one of them give their presentation. And then after their presentations, we will take questions. And so the best way for questions is if you can just go ahead and type it in the chat box. I'll keep track of them while they're talking. And then I will go ahead and read the questions out loud, and then our presenters will have a chance to answer them. Okay. And I ask that everybody keep themselves muted so that we don't distract the panelists and others while they're listening. So thank you. And I will go ahead and do our introductions. So we have Alan Hood with us today. And he is the Airport Safety Data Program Manager at the Georgia Department of Transportation. And he has been with the GDOT for about 14 years in the Aviation Programs Office, but he has been in the airport industry in Georgia for 21 years. He is the primary airport inspector and over 7460 review for all public general aviation airports at the state in Georgia. So that is a little bit about Alan, and let's talk about our other presenter, who is Kathy Boynton, and she is actually the airport manager at Statesboro Bullock County Airport, and Kathy has worked in the aviation field for over 20 years. She was the owner of a Part 141 certified VA-approved flight school for almost 10 years. And she has acted as a consultant for flight schools for approximately 4 years and has been the airport manager at Statesboro Bullock County Airport for over 8 years. So welcome, presenters. We are so excited to have you, and I will go ahead and open it up for Alan to begin his presentation.
Thank you very much. Whoop, can you let me share my screen?
Yes.
All right, welcome. We're going to talk about the Airport Master Record, or otherwise known as the 5010, and I'll briefly go over basedaircraft.com as well. If you don't know me, every other year I show up at your airport to inspect the general aviation airports. So hopefully everybody, at least with general aviation airports, knows me. If not, please reach out so I can it'll be a surprise when I show up if you don't. Otherwise, let's see here. The Airport Master Record, it gives basic operational and service data of the airport. It is what I update after every airport inspection. I am not the only person that can update that now, and I'll go through that later in the presentation. Now airport managers also have the ability to update the 5010. The primary purpose of the master record is to identify the minimum data and information about the physical infrastructure, characteristics, services, operations, and status of all the airports. There is a very handy dictionary that goes into great detail about every item on the 5010, and it's linked here in the presentation, and I think we're going to be putting the presentation on the website. So I'm not going to go through that, but we'll go through the 5010 form itself. They can also be found in ADIP as well as available to the public on airportiq5010.com. So I'm going to go over Statesboro's 5010 form since Kathy's on the call with us today. And
where are you going to be photographing for?
go.
Yeah,
So this is your 5010 form. It's different for every airport, but it has all the same general information. It shows the associated city up top, state, local ID, facility number, airport name, county, how far it is from the associated city, what ADO region and aeronautical chart is on the top. Then you get basic general information about the owner and airport manager, so address and phone number. You get the attendance schedule of the airport. You get whether it's public or private. So all the ones that I inspect are all public. You get the lat long of the airport reference code. You get the elevation at that point. Acreage of the total acreage of the airport, whether it has right-hand traffic or not on any of the runways. If there's a landing fee. And then you get general services available. You have what kind of fuel it has, whether or not the, Jet A fuel has PRIST or not. There's MoGas. There's a whole bunch of other choices I have. Most of them just have either 100 low lead or Jet A combinations. If there's an airframe or power plant repair on the field, what kind it is, minor or major. If there's oxygen service available on the field. If there is hangar space available for transit, it would say hangar here. Otherwise, most people just have tie-down apron space available for transit storage. Other services are outlined if you have flight instruction, aircraft rental. Statesboro also has parachuting operations. Anything else aviation service related would be outlined here. You get beacon information, lighting schedule. This for the lighting schedule says see remark. We'll go through the remarks at the bottom in a minute. When the beacon's lighted, sunrise and sunset. Unicom frequency. Now, there is only a spot for the Unicom frequency. If you're towered, there isn't a spot for tower frequency or anything else. It's just Unicom. And if you don't have a Unicom and you are just using CTAF, that isn't even shown. So it's only if you have a manned Unicom on the field that is shown here. If you have a wind indicator, which everybody should, if it's lighted, you'll have an L next to yes. If there's a segmented circle with that wind indicator, control tower information. Then you have based aircraft. These numbers all pull from basedaircraft.com. Another reason we asked you all to keep it updated at least once a year, if not more. And operation counts we get from the airport managers. Some have counters, most do not yet. So it gives the date of last 12 months ending. So the last time I inspected Statesboro was, I believe, early 2001. So we used through the end of 2020, and these were the operation counts for the airport. And then we move down to actual runway specific information in 5010. They have two runways. Their main runway is 1432. It gives length and width, what type of surface is it asphalt or concrete? It would be shown here, and in what condition. Excellent. Good is, at least it was last time I visited them, secondary runway. If there's lighting, it would be shown here. They have high intensity lighting on 1432. What kind of markings? They have precision markings on both ends. And then you have your PAPI information. If you have reels, they would be shown here. She's got a Malzar on runway 32. And then the Part 77 category that I look at. So they're visual on 14 and precision on 32. And AV visual on the secondary runway. If there's a displaced threshold, it will show here. She's got a displaced threshold on 3-2 of almost 300 feet. And then the critical obstruction for part 77 is also identified. Just one obstruction is shown, the quote unquote worst one. So there's a road. It gives a 12-to-1. It's 15-foot tall vehicle on the road, 380 feet from the end of the runway, 540 feet right. And then if it was a close-in obstruction between runway end and 200 feet, there would be a yes and a note at the bottom as to detailing what that close-in obstruction is. And then if you have declared distances published, that they would be shown here. There aren't any for the secondary runway. She has them for the primary runway. And at the end, it's just remarks. So they're specific to numbers up here, or general remarks, or 110 remarks, just general airport remarks here. So for 57 coincides with obstruction. If you are displaced, like she is on 3-2, we also note what the approach slope is to the displaced threshold. So I was getting a 34-to-1 with my handheld instruments from the displaced threshold. 24-hour self-service coincides A70, which is a type of fuel is on the field. And then the lighting, C remark for lighting schedule, we got 81 here. So the high intensity runway lighting for the main runway, preset on medium intensity from dusk to 2300, and then to increase, use CTAF after, or to activate after 2300. And then also the Malzar and the PAPIs are also on CTAF. Most airports out there have this remark. Airport has been surveyed by the National Geodetic Survey. Birds and deer on the vicinity of the airport, pretty common remark on just about all of the airports as well. And then Atlanta Center and Jacksonville Center phone numbers are also in remarks. So that's your 5010 form. And
That's the biggest problem we have right
now, as of a year or two ago, they use ADIP to update the 5010. I go into ADIP now, or the airport managers can also go into ADIP. If you don't have access to ADIP, you can go request a user. I do have the airport manager on record can obtain user registration. I think more people at the airport can as well. I don't think you have to be just the airport manager. But we'll go through how to update that in ADIP. In ADIP, there is actually a very nice help guide as well, linked here on my slideshow. It's also available in the ADIP website. So we'll go through that real quick and show how to update that.
now. I did get the update, you know, realize they need to be withdrawn too.
Of course, things are slowing down. When you log in ADIP, you get a couple of different portals. I don't know what all airport managers have access to, but there will be airport manager or airport master record, AMR. You can look at the facility or update the facility. So we'll go through how to update. And I believe on Friday they're coming out with a new tool for removing obstructions in the FAA database, and I think there's a webinar on that today and Monday. But we'll go through the 5010 updating. So I hit update, and you choose your airport. I'm going to choose Statesboro again. So I have, oh, looks like I already started one. I have the option to choose either additional information or inspection. I don't think airport managers are going to be able to use inspection. Additional information is just anytime you have an update, use additional information. I do that every time I update it when it's not inspection related. But this is the landing page you get to when you log into your airport. You can see the current NOTAMs, it links to the NOTAMs. 5010 form PDF is there. You can see the chart supplement dates of when they're effective and the cutoff for those. And then if you go into facility data on the left, it just takes you through bit by bit, just like the 5010 form. Let that load. So anything grayed out, you can't update via ADIP. It's a different process. So anything regular, you can update the manager information, attendance schedule, owner, address, and phone number. But in order to update actual ownership, you have to submit documents, and it's a little bit different process. If you make any changes, they turn orange. At the bottom, you hit Save Changes, and you go to the next tab. So you got general information, runways, services and facilities, based aircraft, and remarks. It's all very similar setup to the 5010 form. So I'm going to skip runways for a minute and go to services. You have all the different fuel types to choose from, services, other services to choose from. She had, flight instruction, aircraft rental, and parachuting. And then the airframe, power plant repair, whether it's major, minor. You can also click on these little eyes next to it and get a little bit about what the difference is between major, minor. And these are all basically who can edit the field.
Pretty simple. So
we go through that. If save any changes, if you make them, they'll turn orange just so they changed. For based aircraft, I hit that button, validate counts, and it pulls the most recent information from basedaircraft.com. And then it automatically populates it. For operations, you add in general aviation, itinerant, military, if you have air carrier, air taxi, and it automatically totals here in the gray box. Again, turns orange if it changes, hit save, move to the next. We'll go to runways. If you have multiple runways, you have a pull-down menu of which runway to choose. We'll go to her primary runway. There we go. So again, grayed out. You can't change your length and width or runway numbers in ADIP. That's a whole different process. You got to go through an 18B survey if you change your length and width, and numbers get updated through the Aeronautical Information Portal, I believe, but a whole different process. Edge intensity, lighting intensity here. Gross weights, again, not available to update in ADIP. That's got to be something the ADO does. Get your information to us, we'll get it to the ADO. And then you get the lighting approach aids, what the surface type is, condition of the markings, what kind of PAPIs you have, PAPI numbers. If you had reels, they would say yes here. Approach light, she's got a Malzar on 3.2. And then this is the Part 77 information, the critical obstruction on each runway end. You can actually see what is shown on a map. So this would be 3.2 X on that road right here. So this drops off. Well, it's closer over here, it drops off and it's a little lower, and this one is technically a worse obstruction. But again, it's Part 77. She's displaced. That road is not a problem to the displacement. Get out of here. But no matter if you're displaced or not, I still got to point out what the Part 77 critical obstruction is. And then declare distances, grayed out. That's another something that the ADO has to do. But you get the information to us, we'll get it to the ADO and get it updated. So that is update. And then once you've filled everything out, hit save and then submit the changes. And you'll get an email with all the highlighted changes that you made, and just a record of all the changes that you made will be emailed to you. And I'm going to terminate that because I'm not submitting anything. All right, and then there is a help guide within ADIP and also linked here. Just in case any of you haven't done based aircraft in a while, or you're new and you haven't been able to get through it yet, we'll go through based aircraft as well. So it's, again, the only way to update the numbers on your 5010. There are, in your inspection letters from us, if you're general aviation airport, we outline the importance of keeping this updated at least once a year. We'll bug you if it's not. It helps with funding, and also the priority levels are also based on it's based on the asset number you are assigned for the airport, but it's also taken from how many aircraft you have based there. So again, very important to keep that updated. So hopefully you all have, if you're general aviation at BS Airport, have a login for based aircraft. I apologize for all you 139ers out there who this does not pertain to you apparently. But you don't, I don't think you have to choose your airport. I think if you log as an airport manager, your information is there. You can't go look at another airport, or you can't go update another airport. But to add an aircraft, I think the only thing you have to have is the N number, but as much information as you can fill out, the better. Keeping this updated, a lot of times you'll get a few that another airport is claiming. So Statesboro has just a few that other airports are also claiming. The only really way to get that straightened out is with that other airport. And if you got an airplane with a tie-down lease at 2 airports, or with a hangar at 2 airports, that's next to impossible to actually get straightened out, unless the other airport doesn't have a ground lease and you do. You can, submit it through the website, and sometimes they'll be able to clear that up and take it off the other airport. But in general, it unfortunately comes down to the airports talking amongst themselves to clean up some of these. Not the best situation. We all know that. But make sure after you edit anything, you hit this green, click here, confirm aircraft data. That updates the date of, to make sure we don't bug you if you haven't confirmed in the last year. And if you haven't updated in many years, the FAA is going to start wondering, especially if you're on the magic 10 number, if you truly have 10 aircraft. So make sure that that's constantly being confirmed after every time you edit this list. Again, hopefully you all know about this, at least in the general aviation world. If you have any additional questions, you can go through the user guide, or reach out to myself and I can help you. But that is based aircraft. And that's my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing and let Kathy take over.
Oops. Again, there we go. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, great. As Amber said, I'm Kathy Boykin. I've been the airport manager here at Statesboro for about 8.5 years. Prior to that, I owned the flight school. So when I accepted the position as airport manager, I thought I knew a good bit about the airport. I mean, I've been in the environment. I knew a lot of the people here. I knew a lot of the aircraft. I've been familiar with those. So I really felt pretty good about it. Well, about 2 weeks in, I started realizing that I didn't even begin to know anything about it. So along about that time, they came and announced that the previous airport manager, prior to his resignation, had agreed to host a class of airport inspectors. So here I am, new to the job. I've been here just a couple weeks, and I found out that I'm going to have a class of 25 airport inspectors. Now, kind of in the back of my mind, I knew we got inspections, but I really wasn't sure where or who did it or whatnot. So I'm sitting there and I feel like they're just going to look over this airport with a magnifying glass, and I have no clue where any of this stuff came from. So I was just like, oh my stars, what am I going to do? Thankfully, at that point, they say the first step to learning anything is to realize that you just don't know. And I was at that point. I didn't know all of this. So I asked if I could sit in on this class. And that to me has been one of the most beneficial things I ever did, because they explained, just like Alan did, the 5010 based aircraft, just so many things I had no clue that there was. And so when Amber called me to ask what could GAA do that I felt would be most beneficial to airports, I said training. I said I would love for every airport manager to go through this 5010. It was actually called the Airport Master Records Seminar. I always just called it the 5010 class, but the official name is Airport Master Records Seminar. So then, you know, I felt like if we have such a wide variety of airports, everything from an airport that may have a 3,000-foot runway and no manager on staff, all the way up to Hartsfield. So we need to get the word out there as much as possible. So I felt training was a good thing. I was really glad to hear that you had started the training program. And like I said, I knew that we had airport inspections, but I really didn't know who did it or what they looked at. So through this class, I found out, just like Alan talked about, they look at all of these things and go out and actually physically check your pavement and your signage and based aircraft and all of that. And one thing I wanted to talk about is a learning thing for me. You noticed on the bottom of the 5010 in the remarks section, it had items that were permanent or semi-permanent, just like our displaced threshold. That will probably be in place long after I retire, because to extend that runway would require moving the road and then you get into wetlands. So I feel pretty confident in saying that's permanent or semi-permanent. But a lot of times in airport management, you'll have construction going on, and you may have a plane breakdown on your runway or whatnot. It's a temporary condition, and you need to get that word out to pilots. So that's where we file a NOTAM. And one thing that really struck me, I mean, when I had the flight school, we checked for NOTAMs and we filed flight plans, but I really didn't know how that information got on there. I mean, how did it get to the website? Who did you call? So in the class, the master record class, they covered that. And this is the form they gave us, and I use it to this day. It's got the number you call. You can write down what you want to say. You know, runway 1432 closed from now until 5 p.m. local time. And like I said, this is vitally important. We also, in addition to filing the NOTAM, we put the NOTAM on our AWOS, so that anybody getting weather from our AWOS also has access to this information. As airport managers, we're responsible for letting the aviation community know anything that would prevent, restrict, or present a hazard during the arrival or departure of an aircraft. Right now, I've got a taxiway project going on, so just in case they inadvertently get in my runway safety area, I've got a NOTAM saying, caution, there's construction in place, you know. So it lets them know, watch out, so they can be aware of the hazard. Another responsibility we have is keeping those NOTAMs for at least 12 consecutive calendar months. So what I do when I file a NOTAM, I have that sheet I showed you on the previous screen. I fill it out. I've got a notebook. I keep all of that in. So if any point anything happens, we've got a record that yes, we have a NOTAM in place. We're also responsible for reporting and updating other airport field conditions. Just like if our fuel was down, we need to let pilots know that. So we file a NOTAM. The big one for me is we need to also, this is, I shouldn't say big one, but extremely important, we need to keep an up-to-date list on file with FSS so that when somebody calls, they know that they're actually authorized to issue the NOTAM. And that became extremely important. I learned it before I was an airport manager. I had the flight school one morning early. I got a phone call from my flight instructor. And he says, Miss Kathy, we wanted to take off at dawn. He said, so we were in here, we called to file the flight plan and get NOTAMs, and they tell us this airport's closed. He said, what do you know? And I said, nothing. I said, there's nothing going on. That airport should not be closed. So I came in and I checked. Sure enough, the airport's closed. We've got a NOTAM in place. So I've got planes on the ground ready to take off. We had 3 or 4 planes in the air that couldn't land because the airport's closed. What happened, our airport manager was terminated, resigned, walked out, whatever. He wasn't here. So the beacon light went out and the security guard called to report the beacon light was out. Somewhere in that conversation, they closed the airport. The really bad part was nobody was authorized to cancel this NOTAM except the airport interim manager. He'd only started a day or so before. We had his home phone number. We did not have his cell phone number. So it took us about 2 or 3 hours to get this airport opened back up. So that is something I stay on top of. I have myself, I have the public works director, I've got my senior lineman, I've got the airport committee chairman. They can all issue a NOTAM or cancel a NOTAM as need be. Well, here's one. I'm not very good at this. We're supposed to stay informed of NOTAM technology. Right now, the preferred way to file a NOTAM is online. And like I said, I'm not really good at that. I like to talk to people. I've got the link here, so it will be in the presentation when you get it. You'll be able to check and look at the advisory circular. What I do is call. And when I call, I just say, this is Kilo Bravo at Tango Bravo Romeo. I'd like to issue a NOTAM. For instance, if I'm closing runway 1432, I would say, I'm closing runway 1432 from now until 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So they'll put all of that in and read it back to me. I'll make sure it's correct. And I want, on my form I showed you before, we want to be sure we get their initials so we know who we reported it to, so they've got it documented. And on this, it says call them back to get the NOTAM number. What I've always found is they issue the NOTAM and they give me the number while I'm on the phone with them. But I do go back to this website that's listed on the bottom of the screen and pull it up and make sure it's issued correctly. I have before issued a NOTAM and they close the north end instead of the south end of the taxiway, things like that. So just follow up. And what I do is print up those NOTAMs. After I issue the NOTAM, I've got it in my book. I print that up, I highlight the NOTAM and put them together. So if there's ever a question, then I've got documentation. I told you early on that one of the statements the instructor said in the class was airport managers don't issue NOTAMs and pilots don't read them. Our taxiway lights were out one night. I'd issued a NOTAM, thankfully, and this gentleman, who was a 21-year flight instructor, had never had a problem, landed at this airport. He could see our taxiway lights were out. He landed, he taxied in. Unfortunately, it had been raining, so his landing light was reflecting back and he couldn't really see the pavement. He cut it short and ran into our taxiway sign. This is another reason we want to be sure we file a NOTAM, because his very first statement when he got out of his plane was try to make it our fault. And he said, your taxiway lights are out and you really need to let people know about it. Thankfully, the security guard knew that we had the NOTAM and he said, no, sir. He said, we have a NOTAM in place saying the taxiway lights are out and we've got it on our AWAS. So he went back, he looked, he did come in and apologize, but that, wound up being on his insurance company. We did have to replace our taxiway sign. His poor Cirrus had a prop strike, the cowling, it had a hole in it, the landing gear, it was a mess. It took it quite a while to get all of that straightened out. Another thing Alan mentioned is the 7460, and he reviews those. We are responsible for that. And we're supposed to file the 7460, it's a notice of proposed construction or alteration, 45 days before the start of construction. And that needs to be filed if anything higher than 2,000 feet. What we really need to watch out for too is anything close at or near our airport. We make sure they file a 7460. And I've got the link to that document at the bottom of this slide, so you'll be able to look it up. This really came home to me about the need to make ourselves aware of what's going on into the community. One of the local airports had an announcement in the paper. A gentleman was proposing to put a landfill right around 3 miles from the end of his runway. So I actually went to the gentleman's presentation and he said, this landfill's it's going to be 250 feet high. And he was really pushing it and he wanted to do it and it was all gung ho. Well, the fact that he didn't file a 7460 gave us a little bit of time to work with him, and we were able to present the concerns about wildlife and buzzards and one thing and another to the planning and zoning of that county. So ultimately, the Board of Commissioners decided not to put the landfill there. They needed to find an alternative place to locate that. So after that, I became concerned with this county because we have so much going on. I asked planning and zoning to send me each month just a summary of the applications, and I kind of look at where is it located, what are they proposing. In most cases, it's not anything that would affect the airport, but I try to watch for towers. I try to watch, make sure they don't want to put a subdivision off the end of 3-2 where we've got the approach, just different things like that. So those are the importance of the 7460. Now I wanted to show this. This is a 7460 from a movie we have filmed here at the airport. And it's one of the most complicated ones I think I've ever seen because we had to take into effect so many different things. We had, this is the movie called Devotion, and they wanted to build an aircraft carrier beside of our runway, not an aircraft carrier, a set of the top of an aircraft carrier. And they wanted to make part of our runway look like the deck of an aircraft carrier. So we have an abandoned runway at the back of our airfield. They wanted to use that to set up the equipment and the tents and all the things. To get back there, you have to drive through critical area and through the area where our AWAS is. So the GMC, our consultant engineers, worked on this in coordination with Alan and Michael and Steve and Colette. And I'm so thankful we've got the crew at GDOT that we do, because this would have never happened without their support and their guidance. We were able to get this all reviewed and approved. This is the top of the aircraft carrier back there. And what they wound up doing is just putting out like a rug or a tarp on our runway and make it look like the deck of that aircraft carrier. So you can see on the old abandoned runway. We had runway 624 closed. On the abandoned runway, they had tents. Now, this is early on. This is before they were full steam ahead. They were just at this point getting the set built and getting everything set up. So you can see their generators and ultimately everything back toward the AWAS, the 500 foot from the AWAS, was filled up with tents and parking. So it was quite an experience. That movie was called Devotion, which took place in the Korean War. So you can see here is right before they shot a scene, but you can see the Corsairs. They brought Corsairs in and had them back there. And those containers you saw, they put like a shower curtain over them to make the blue backdrop so they could film that. And the movie will be out November 23rd. I put a link here if you wanted to watch the trailer to the movie. I started to show it today, but I couldn't figure out how to get it to work. So we'll leave the link in the slide and let you guys click on it. I wanted to let you know too, some really good tools I've found for airport managers. The ACRP reports are fantastic. The guidebook for managing a small airport was one of the first things I got after Alan's class. And it's just got a bunch of information that's so helpful. Another one is Report 184, the Understanding Grant Assurances, and that affects about every area of an airport operation. I didn't know anything about grant assurances before I started. It's a learning experience every day, which I'm sure you can relate to. And then another really good resource is the American Association of Airport Executives. They have just all kinds of training and certifications. I did the certified member program and went through that training and took the test. So I found it extremely helpful. Just there's so much information. And I wanted to tell you too, if there's any way I can help any of you out there, if you have a question or anything maybe I've done here, I'd be glad to help. Just give me a shout. Thank you. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'll turn it back over to Amber now.
Thank you, Kathy. That was amazing. Thank you, Alan. We really appreciate your presentations. We do have just a couple questions, so I'll go ahead and read those. And I see that we've kind of gotten a couple answers, but I'll still go ahead and read them out for everybody else's benefit. So I think Billy from Vidalia had asked, what's the best source to keep track of operation counts for the 5010? Is there a software? And Alan, I see you responded if you want to kind of go into that. And I think there's another website somebody posted as well in the chat.
Yes. So, you know, people had been using cameras or acoustic, and it's really hard to get everything. And ADSB counters we're finding are the best. There was a couple of airports they were able to get in under a test phase and didn't have to pay for the whole thing. I don't think that at least 1200.aero is not under testing anymore. I don't know about others. But in order to get a true sense of what operations are at your airport broken out by aircraft type, we're finding ADSB counters are definitely the best. And I threw in some examples there. I'm sure there are others, but at least some of the ones that we know about are Vertower, 1200.aero, and AeroCloud so far. I don't know if Guard uses ADSB or what. I'm not enough familiar with it, but that's what we're finding.
And I might step in. We got an email from FlightAware, and they had a thing called PiAware. It was one of the little Raspberry Pi computer things. So I bought that, and I bought the antennas and put it all together. I think it was $239 or something like that. So although I don't have the outdoor antenna installed yet, I'm just using the inside antenna just sitting in the window on the runway side, and it's picking up a lot. So up until now, we've just had the linemen sitting there and marking down every takeoff or landing and trying to best guess what we're missing. But it looks like the PiAware thing is going to work.
Awesome, thank you. So the next question is, after a major project like a runway refurbishment, who updates the changes such as the conditions like displaced threshold, etc.?
So as far as pavement condition, you can either go ahead and update that yourself, or you can let me know when it's done and I can update it. Otherwise, it would be updated after your next inspection. But as far as things like a new displaced threshold, that is not something that can be done via 5010. That has to be done through a 18B survey in ADIP. Anytime you move a threshold or increase runway length, or I believe change the width as well, everything, it has to go through an 18B survey in ADIP. But if you're looking about just changing your condition, you can do that, or reach out to me when it's done and I can update it.
I know some airports use consultants for different things like that. Would that be something a consultant could submit on behalf of an airport sponsor, or does it have to be an airport sponsor?
I don't know if consultants can update in ADIP. I know airport managers and I know me. I don't know about consultants.
So is there a triggering event that could cause an airport to need to go ahead and refill out their 5010 or update it outside of that, biannual review kind of date you threw out there?
It's really anything that would change on there that you want to update before I get out there. If you get a new type of fuel system, or new airport manager, obviously. But anything that would change on the 5010, it's worth either reaching out to myself or updating it yourself. And if it's grayed out, then contact me and we can help get it updated a different way.
Right. And what are the consequences if an airport sponsor is not consistently updating their 5010 and you come out there and do inspect it?
It's basically, what is done via my inspections, and it's only to help you guys if you guys can do it on your own. And if things are changing, there are no penalties if something needs to be updated. That's what I do every 2 years. It's just whether or not you want things updated in between my every 2-year inspection, as to whether you guys can go in there and update things. But certainly no penalty. You won't get into trouble if something is out of date. It's just I'll get to it eventually. If you want it sooner published, you guys can do it yourself.
All right, thank you. And Kathy, I have a question for you. Can you talk a little bit, like what kind of lessons learned from having, a film company come out on your field and kind of, shoot that film out there? How long did it take, and what kind of feedback? Because we know Georgia's a big state for filming, and we in Columbus have had some requests. I'm sure other airports as well. If you could kind of give us some insight on that.
Well, it was a blessing to the whole community. Not only did they lease this, but of course this back here was a non-aeronautical use of the airport, so we had to get approval for that. And they had to pay the lease for that. They paid $100,000 a month lease for this back here. So they were here for 5 months. So that $500,000 is actually what we're going to use to rehab our secondary runway. So that was a blessing. Gracious me, I did learn a new NOTAM. Colette was kind enough to help us with this, because on the days they were flying, there were like 2 or 3 days that they wanted to fly and use our primary runway. We were able to issue a NOTAM requiring any pilot that wanted to take off the land to give us a 2-hour notice. And so it was a prior permission only. And that worked really well, because they could call and give us a 2-hour notice, and all the film crews and everybody could get back out of the way. So that was a good thing. And there again, I can't say enough about the great crew we've got at GDOT, because without their help and input, we would have never been able to do it. As far as lessons learned, it just, my mind couldn't even begin to comprehend. You know, I guess I kind of thought they were going to put up a cardboard boat out there and walk around full of cameras, and I didn't know what to expect. So it was just such a learning thing, and it was so exciting watching all of that activity and so much coordination. And they did that in the middle of COVID. So every morning everybody was checked, and they maintained the 6 foot distance, the social distancing, and they had on their masks and they wore gloves, and it was just amazing to watch that. But as I was trying to think what else, because it was just so much I learned during that whole thing. And if anybody decides to have filming at the airport, I'd be glad to help. Although, like I said, GDOT is just they walked us through it. I think Coletta had filming at an airport she was at before. But I actually, after that, had a couple airports call and wanted to know about that note on the prior permission only. So that worked really well.
That's great. Thank you. I don't have any other questions. Does anybody have last questions they want to type in the chat box? Okay, not seeing any. So just a couple, I want to say thank you very much to Alan and Kathy. We appreciate you giving these presentations and taking the time to speak to us. So thank you for that. And the information was extremely valuable. So I just want to remind everybody, if you go to the GAA's website, you can submit topics if you have other things that you're interested in learning about. And I think earlier in the chat, there was a direct link if you want to use that. But we have our conference coming up in October. So if you haven't already registered, please make sure that you do register, because we're going to have some great presentations, educational sessions at the conference as well. And we have a lot of other resources on our website. So if you haven't checked it out recently, please go on there and do that. And we will be posting our next seminar, our webinar here shortly. So look out for that, and we hope to see you next month. Thanks, everybody.